All right. So, everyone ready for our afternoon session? Yes. It's not loud enough. I know there's more energy. Good. Okay, before we get started, I seem to be always pointing out where the restrooms are, but that's my job as the MC. So restrooms are out the door and down the hall, that way, and I think there are signs there, and there will be Google volunteers who can help escort you if you need help. And we will be taking a break between each session, each speaker in this afternoon. So if you do want to switch to the other track, that would be the time to do it. And the other one is also happening down the hall, and one of the Google volunteers can help you get to that other room. So our first speaker is the head of localization and international product at Jawbone. Her focus areas are product marketing, business development, user experience, technical account management, and ad operations. Laura was named one of the 40 most powerful women in 2013 by Forbes Mexico, and was also recognized by the Department of State and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton for her involvement in the Tech Women program, where she was the only female leader from Twitter to participate in 2012. Please join me in welcoming Laura.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Yes? Great. I just want to take a sort of a poll of, and if you can raise your hand, how many students do we have in here? Great. Either in the back, hi, student. People who work in the industry here, I'm guessing at Google. Great, Google representing in the front. Other tech companies, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. Who does not work in sort of what I've called, I think I was talking to a woman here, a young lady, that she actually works in healthcare. Are there other industries, there you are, that are not represented or I have not said? Startups. Startups. Education? Yes. NASA. NASA, great. So I'm very honored to be here on International Women's Day speaking in front of all of you. Also, let's take a moment to realize how honored and how privileged we are to actually be here. On this day, there's many women that don't have access to either attending the sessions or that are around the world that actually don't have access to technology. So let's make sure that we understand where we are and how privileged we are to actually be in an area in Silicon Valley and where we're meeting and be next to all these amazing women that I've met so far. I'm going to just speak on behalf of just being a woman. Zora Neale Hurston, does anyone know who this author is? Okay. I read a book in high school that said that the black woman is the mule of the world, saying that the white male oppresses the black male, and the black male then turns around and maybe oppresses. And this talks about gender and race. And I'm not here to really talk about gender and race, but as you know, my presenter just said, really it's those unconscious bias that we don't speak of. My accent, how I look like, where I was born, what is my background. In Silicon Valley, we tend to number ourselves by what employee or what team we're working on. And it's just really being honest about our privileges that we have being here. So I'm going to talk about my resistance to technology and being in the tech field and how I ended up here and now how I feel about it. Cool. And I'm going to go over who am I? Why am I speaking in front of you besides my LinkedIn bio or my Twitter profile? Or something that you can Google on me, but who am I? I'm really going to go deep into giving you sort of a look at Laura, not just the brand or image of me or the idea of me, but really who am I? And searching for a job after college for all the students, and then finding a career. And also the loyalty that men and women have shown for me throughout my whole career, throughout my whole life. And then, of course, the next steps and what I want to do as far as taking everything that I've learned. Okay, here's some background. Throughout my travels, I've traveled a lot. I was actually very lucky and either fortunate or lucky to be at the right time at the right place. I was in Brazil in one time, and I ended up going to an after party with a very famous soccer player while traveling in Brazil. I would do something else and then come home three days later, and my roommate was like, "Where were you?" And I was like, "Well, then I met this famous samba player, and then we went and partied with this other people." And it just ended up that she said, "You were born with your butt to the moon, Laura." And I couldn't understand what that saying was in Portuguese. I was learning, and I had to ask people what that meant, and it said that you were born lucky. And I do think I was born lucky. But I also feel like the moon has come to me because I have worked hard for it, and because I have sought the right opportunities as well. So obviously, when you see the moon, and someone titled, one day I'll write a book and it'll be called Ask to the Moon, because I think it'll be titled exactly, not just because I'm lucky or fortunate, but I was lucky, and you'll see where my luck came in, but with my hard work and the opportunities. That's me as a child, 3 years old. You can follow me on Twitter. My username is @Laura. I can go into detail why I have that username, but you can figure it out. I was an early Twitter employee, so that's how I got it. That's my sister next to me. I was born in León, Guanajuato, Mexico, which is central Mexico. I thought it was a happy childhood up until I came to the United States, and I compared that childhood to the childhood that people had here, and the accessibility and the abundance that the United States brought in comparison to my childhood. But I grew up happy in my great-grandma's ranch every summer, running through the cornfields, everything you can possibly think of, with my sisters. Around the age of 8 or 9, and I don't really disclose this, my mom was a young mom. My mom had me at 20, so when I was 20, when she was only 27, 28, she got cancer. And so she was here in the United States visiting family member, and so she decided to actually go ahead and get treatment here. Luckily, our family all lived in the Bay Area. So at the age of around 10, that's my hometown. And just for everyone to know, Guanajuato, it's really beautiful. You should visit. Tell me if you have any tips. I'll give you a lot of tips. It's colonial. It was a happy place to actually grow up. That's the first. I think that's the first picture in the first apartment that we took after we came from Mexico. Obviously, my brother looks scared. My sister looks confused, but then my older sister and I look happy because we knew we were now here in El Norte, the north, this place that I remember my cousins going to Mexico and telling me that my eyes would turn blue and my hair would turn blonde once I migrated to the United States. And I was like, I like my brown hair, I like my brown eyes. And as an immigrant, I learned, and I promised her I wouldn't cry, but I learned English. Who is here? My 5th grade teacher. On her 64th birthday, she's here. She's actually on the State Board of Technology and Education, so everything comes full circle. Miss Paradise, that's her name. So I was like, this is the reason the United States is so successful. All the teachers have this amazing names. The teacher after her was called Miss Bright. I was just like, the United States. It's amazing. Later did I learn that not all teachers had really amazing names. But Miss Paradise, she was just telling me that she knew how adept I was to math in spite of my language barriers. I told her, I convinced her, I said, let me stay in your class. I know I don't speak a lot of English, but I will at the end of the year. And I think she still has this essay where I wrote a whole essay, and then there was a little heart with a Mexican flag and the US flag at the end. But she believed in me, and she believed that I knew that at 5th grade, if I stayed in ESL or English as a second language course, then in 6th grade that would happen, that in the middle school I would still be tracked into that sort of track. And then in high school, I would not have the accessibility into the AP courses. I didn't know that when I was 10, but I knew that I wanted to learn English so I could insult my cousins, but also get ahead. And now I see the decisions that were made. And so I discuss this, and I call it horizontal loyalty. From the time you're born to the time you're actually, move on. All of that your faces when you're young, or when you're studying, or when you choose a career, or when you personally choose marriage and children and move on and then retire. There will be people that will follow you throughout the whole horizontal journey of your life, and that's called horizontal loyalty. And I think I'm here through this horizontal loyalty, and I know that I will be supported, finding that community, as the speaker said this morning, finding that community of people that support you through that, your path of life. At 17, although I was keen to math and science, I didn't really have a lot of educators besides Miss Paradise that really pushed me to it. I was natural, but I also got good grades. I learned English, and my prom date at that time, I got a better AP score in AP English score than he did. I got a 5, he got a 2. And I was like, you were born here. What happened? I learned English 4 years ago. So I got my first internship at Hewlett-Packard. I grew up, my mom was a nanny to a CEO of a big tech firm. And for me at that time, the late 90s was just, this is tech, this is software. I had an internship at 17 software technology department. Right before I entered Berkeley, I got a full ride to Berkeley by an engineering company called Raychem, now Tyco Electronics at that time. And I was on my track to actually be in tech and engineering and science. And I resisted. I got that internship. I said, I don't want to work. You know, here it wasn't something that I felt. That was the beginning when I decided not to be in engineering, and I went to UC Berkeley. Who here is a Cal Bear? Woo! I went to the dean. I'm like, I don't think I want to be an engineer. They are like, okay, choose another thing. There wasn't a lot of support for me to maintain on that track. That's the same year that Google was born, and now that you think about it, I'm here, you know, 17 years later. Yes. If that, I would have chosen a track where would have been. But obviously I didn't. I chose economics, development studies, languages. I was keen to languages early on, and now professionally that's what I do. Localization is all about languages and international. So by the time I reached college, I was learning my third language in less than 8 years. So I had learned English, then I took French in high school, then I took Portuguese in college, and that was my passion, languages. My passion was also to change the world like any liberal arts Berkeley student can attest. And so I traveled, I studied abroad, as I said, in Brazil. I had great adventures. That's actually called a fita do bom fim, which means it's you go to a church and then you grab one of those and then you tie it 3 times. I have one right here, and you make 3 wishes. And then when it falls out, those wishes are supposed to come true. So I made those wishes. I said, I want to go to grad school. I want to graduate without debt. That was almost impossible, but I almost made it there. And I want to find fulfilling career in my 20s. I graduated Berkeley, and I decided I wanted to give back. Having my mom had cancer, I went ahead and did a lot of health education with women, bilingual women of lower incomes and resources, to make sure that they had access to the right prevention programs as well as treatment programs for breast cancer. But I decided I wanted to go back to grad school. And I did. I went back to grad school. I graduated in sociology and Latin American studies. I did my ethnography, my research in Northeast Brazil around the concept of street children. And I talked about how in a very Afro-Brazilian region, and I just looked at how race and class were portrayed for urban youth. You know, you see youth here that might dress a different way, you automatically classify them. And this is done throughout the world. So I graduated with I wanted to work for UNICEF, wanted to move somewhere. But then I came back to the Bay Area, and my mom actually was like, no, you need to get a job. You need to be, you know, I did not come to this country and raise you to be like, oh, yes, let me travel some more and let me study. She's like, you need to get a job. So I did a quick search. I went on Craigslist, and I just put jobs, and then I just put near me. Palo Alto. I found one in Palo Alto. He's still my good friend. He's the CEO. David Kandasamy said, you're too overqualified to be doing this job. And I was like, I just need to pay off some loans, please. And that's my first startup. Like, the startup got acquired by AKQA, the advertising agency. That's how I ended up in tech, by doing a quick search near me on Craigslist. That agency got acquired by AKQA, and before you know it, I was off to London. I was living in London, setting up the operations for AKQA and Search Rev. And having the time of my life, once again, decided to take the opportunity to travel. And if anyone here is just, traveling just opens up your eyes. I was always had like Latin America, and then I went to Europe, and I would go from London and go to Prague or go to Copenhagen. And during that time, my recruiter called and like, "Are you happy?" And I'm like, "I'm living in London. Yay, I am." They're like, "How about if you want to come back?" And I was like, "Yeah, I should, come back to the United States," and said, "Well, we're looking for a contract position at this company, YouTube. Have you heard of it?" This was in 2007. It was just when YouTube, I think it was a month or two after it was acquired by Google that I came onto the YouTube family as a contractor that sent me off to Brazil because of my language skills. And obviously my language skills have been a driving force in my career. And there in Google Brazil, I met this beautiful, tall German woman that I first did not like because she's so beautiful, who's now she was working at the Google Hamburg office and who's now one of my best friends, Tomke. She lives in Mexico City. She had been with Google up until this year that she became a mom about, I think, 9 years. And so Tomke, and this is a horizontal loyalty that I speak about. Tomke never questions. I say, maybe I don't want to do this, or maybe I do, or maybe I want to open this. And every time I see her, I was like, what happened to that? I was like, it didn't work out, or it did, look. And it's just never questions, understands, and just like whatever you need from me, understands my talent, understands my drive, understands the decisions I want to make. The 2008 was a hard time. I don't know if a lot of you can recall here in Silicon Valley, there were layoffs left and right. There was, what I wanted was just stability. And I didn't feel like startup world offered me that. YouTube decided to say, hey, we were going to bring this position either in country, do you want to go there or not? And I said, not now, I need to stay with my family. I went to other several startups, people that I met. They're still friends of mine. One is a Google designer here for Search. I also have all these friends that I met in all these startups that we have followed. But there were layoffs. I got laid off one of startup. Then I was like, okay, I'm laid off of this startup. What do I do? I went on Twitter. At that time, when another friend of mine, who's actually a hacker here, Brad Fitzpatrick, Brad's like, have you heard of Twitter? And I was like, why would I want to post my breakfast? Like, no. And he's like, you should, and I joined. Quickly, there was a very basic design. 5 months later, I believe that I call it mooning because this is where luck came in. I saw this, this on the Time magazine. And I was like, what are the chances that I could apply? I was already working in another startup, so I had gotten a new job through Twitter. So I was working in another startup, heading their director of operations and product. And I became quickly more addicted to this tool. I read this, and I read about the impact that Twitter had, read the profile of Biz and Ev at that point, and I think that's my phone. It's my sister. And they did not have any positions open that weren't, infrastructure engineering, because like the reliability and the fail well at that time. And then I think they had one position open for that, and that position was a contract position for someone that spoke Spanish and Portuguese. So I was like, it's for me, let me apply. I would have thought that the sheer number of resumes they probably got after being on the cover of Time magazine and the Iran revolution probably don't know how my resume stuck out. At that point, the first Twitter employee ever, Crystal, called me, and Crystal hung up on me after 5 minutes. And I was like, I just screwed that. And then when I asked her later on when I was hired why, she's like, I knew you were qualified in 5 minutes. And I knew that this would be, contract for now, but it would take longer. I took a severe pay cut. I remember my boyfriend at that time, I went and got a manicure. I was like, I think this is the last time I can get one of these nice manicures, because I just took a pay cut to join this company who at that time had just gotten hacked, and all of the internal memos had been leaked. There was a stability with fail whale. The mainstream media thought it was just a tool to post breakfast pictures. There wasn't a lot of credibility to this overhyped. And sometimes I read things around new products, Snapchat and everything like that, and the same criticisms repeat themselves, and you just know what the value could be in the long run. You wait and see on what that happens. So I was hired. I was the first Latina, the first woman to join the international team. I was one of the founding team members. The other woman was Yukari, who's also an immigrant from Japan, who has a similar story, came as a child. She was director of international at that time, and I came in to launch Twitter en Español. I was in Mexico for my cousin's quinceañera when we launched Twitter en Español, and I was like, yeah, and I was like, what is that? Like, we don't know what this tool is. Even my mom, like now my mom sees Mexican soap operas, and she's like, oh, tweet it, yeah, you have that. So yeah, I came in doing Twitter en Español, and it was really amazing because they just pretty much, Ev and Biz were like, do whatever you want with this. And I was like, okay. So it was like product, BD, support. I was answering tickets with people that lost their passwords in Spanish, everything under the sun. When you're an early employee at a company, you wear so many hats, and anyone who's a startup here understands you wear, or a mini startup within a bigger company. I wore all these hats, and they're like, I got full-time, 6 months later, team lead, 2 months later, manager, another 6 months later, head of localization. Things move fast. I tell people I think I was 40, but then the company's all hands fit in one couch at that point. And the first all hands it was called Tea Time that I attended, was 3.5 hours on why the fail whale was failing. And so that's where the adventure started, and I say that was luck. You know, if I hadn't applied, but it was my hard work that got me into the interview, into the door, and it was the opportunity. As I saw myself within the company, I saw an opportunity for localization, that international users, when my team translated with the help of really talented product, program, and engineering managers, we launched Right to Left. You know, the impact that had in the Middle East, that was amazing. So all of these things are really taking that opportunity within the org to make sure, and chatting. And during this time, I created a lot of loyalties. I would go as a woman, and I'm going to say not having a technical degree, I would ask my engineering managers when we were having a product meeting to repeat what I said, or to say it first, and I can agree, just because I knew that they would be heard slightly more than I would. So Nico and Matt know that I would be like, hey, can you back me up on this? I would say in a way that they didn't feel like that they had, but I think it was the hidden, you know, rule between us that I had to go in there with them so that I could be heard. I don't think this is endemic to just Twitter or to other ones, and I don't think it was a culture within a certain organization. I think it's just women in tech in general. Sometimes we do, my personality self is very outspoken, so I want to be heard the loudest. Maybe it is because of who I am, or maybe because of the fact that I know that's the only way I can get. But you learn along the way. Sometimes you learn to not say anything and to just understand, and to also know that when I was questioned by another woman that I wasn't technical enough, I went and asked the engineer manager, am I? And they're like, yes, you're the most technical. Having built a whole tool from going from scratch of 1,200 volunteer translators crowdsourcing translation at Twitter to 1 million by the time I left, and having all of these crowdsourced languages being translated in simplified Chinese was translated in a day and a half by volunteer translators. In Iran, when we translated into Farsi, translators actually wrote email says, I cannot disclose my actual identity, or I could be imprisoned or killed in Iran. So giving that impact back, and being inspired by what I was doing, really I didn't focus on the being woman or being Latina. I think I focused a little bit more on the being Latina. If I get called feisty too many times, I will get feisty. But that's, you know, then conscious drive. Going back into what inspires me, what makes me drive, is that we believed early on, and I quote this to Bizstone, that we weren't just a triumph of technology and a triumph of humanity. And so, like, as you know, you go back and you think how your technology is going back and making sure that that technology's triumphed, but more importantly, how is it helping humanity in general? I'm going to put it out there. Sometimes if I see one more first world San Francisco problem startup fund, I think like this is great. But where are those? I knew about WhatsApp 4 years ago because everyone uses that. I used to communicate with my friends around the world. And there are a lot of great startups in Silicon Valley creating great products, but that could also be, to a certain extent, giving back. And now I'm going to talk about the loyalty component and where this comes from and the horizontal loyalty. Robert Krulwich, and I think I said it right, is actually a journalist. And he gave the commencement speech at Berkeley in 2011 at the School of Journalism. And he discusses this. He discussed about thinking about horizontal loyalty. Think about turning to people you already know, who are your friends or friends of their friends, and making something that makes sense to you together, both of you or all of you, that is as beautiful as true as you can make it. And that horizontal loyalty is actually what people can call networking. I don't call it networking because I don't go to network events to meet people. I go to connect people or understand how I can help them. I'm a mentor to several startups from all over the world, from Israel all the way from Argentina. And I tell them, how can I make this connection? How can I show you my loyalty? Because I believe in your product and your spirit to be such an entrepreneur that you're moving on. A lot of entrepreneurs come here. And this is the region that's paved of gold for them. It's just they feel like Sand Hill Road is like the final point. And the same, if you're an actor somewhere, you think Hollywood is the same. So like just being given that opportunity and that horizontal loyalty. I know several women, a friend of mine, I interviewed her for a position in my team, didn't get hired. I added her on LinkedIn. I said, I thought you were amazing. You were probably too badass for us. And like, let's keep in touch. And now she's one of my close friends. She's leading, international at a very prominent firm. And she talks to me about her challenges as a new mom. And so that loyalty that we have together to make sure, when I'm having doubts professionally, I don't think I have all the answers in the world. I turn to them too as much as they turn to me. And I've made mistakes, many mistakes. And so I tell them, learn from my mistakes because I wouldn't want you to go through those mistakes. And those mistakes are the politics at the office, or those mistakes as not saying something just because you feel passionate without actually filtering out, creating a filter that is appropriate for that situation, or those mistakes that I feel like I failed, and I turn around and I understand that each one of my failures is actually a success in the long run. And there is a quote that I always say that success and failure, treat them with the same indifference, meaning don't be too defined by your success. When Forbes called me and I was actually moderating the Forbes panel on the future of technology in Mexico, and I was in the magazine, people are like, how do you feel about being so successful, or this or that? And I said, you know what? In 10, 15 years, you might find me in like a little magazine, and I'll have a little hut in Mexico putting up a restaurant, and I'll be happy. Probably that is my happiness, like to cook and live next to the beach. So it is, don't define so much by the success, because as it can go down, it can go up. And as well as a failure, define yourself by how you handle both. Definitely something that I've learned along the way. I put these flags because I have friends from all over the world, men and women, and I talk about the men that have supported me and shown horizontal loyalty all over the world, everything from France, Israel. My co-founder, building something, he's actually Palestinian Canadian, and Mo, I met him through the Tech Women program. Tech Women, Ezra, is from Egypt, and when I advocated, I was like, we need to be part of Tech Women. It was the most amazing experience. Now I'm going to select to be part of that program, the only person that I want at Twitter at that time to make sure that we were involved in this amazing program. And when Ezra came to me, I said, Ezra, you're smarter than me. I mean, she runs research and development at Orange, a mobile company, engineer, and I said, you obviously, I cannot teach you anything on the engineering front, but what can I provide for you? And she's like, I want to be a startup. I want to start a startup one day. So I said, okay, I'm going to give you meetings with at least 30 people around the company, from business to HR to marketing, to market development, to engineering, to people operations that you know. So I display these flags because, and I actually, you don't see it because I have my boots, but I have a tattoo that I got of the world long before I came in here. And even everybody's like, you really love the world. Even on my phone case, I got that as a Christmas present. But it is the fact that like the horizontal loyalty has shown throughout countries, has shown throughout regions. My friends in Brazil, all my friends, some of my closest friends all live in Monaco, Brazil, Mexico City, Miami. So it is that horizontal loyalty. And I always feel like when I doubt myself, I just see their little flags and knowing that they will cheer me on regardless of what the next step happens. Some people wait. I don't. I'm very impatient, which is a bad thing, but I'm trying to be a little bit more patient. There are just some people that don't. I'm one of those people. Like, you tell me to kick the ball, I kick it the farthest and probably the fastest than anyone can. But it is, not waiting doesn't mean not waiting for things to change. And so I give back. Some of my close friends are MIT engineers, women, Latinas, immigrants, that are also that are Latinas in STEM. And so I drive to Central Valley and help out with whatever initiative they have going. So I don't wait in other things that I want change. Showing more women in math and science, it's definitely creating that support and saying, if you're good at that, maybe they will stick around. I didn't, but I still ended up here. I'm working now a job on sort of localizing the Internet of Things. It's a challenging position to understand how technology is going to relate to you as a person, but not only to you in your language, in your locale. The things that are more personal to you are those things. You know, if I decide to wear this around my wrist or carry my phone, that's, you know, localization is embedded everywhere you see, but you don't understand that that's actually very important to understanding and your connection to technology. I also, as I said, Mo, my co-founder, I'm also, you know, want to at least attempt at entrepreneurship. This is the source, you know, from Mother Jones, with a lot of the funding that is being said, and a lot of my good friends are VCs, and so nothing. And I think there is that shifting trend now on what the demographics are. All males, 89%, mixed 8% on all female founding group is only 3%. And then you have, of course, the race bias. But I don't focus as much on the race, I think, as I focus on gender, because I believe that regardless of race, women will put forward, and you will see more founders, more women. I think there was a conference around just female founders recently. This is a proverb that I do, and my startup, if you want to know, is just about involving people in technology in a way through all the information that we have available online. And it's a Chinese proverb: tell me and I'll forget, show me and I may remember, involve me and I may understand. So it's definitely key to what's driving me, my passion to build something that will have people. Right now, we have a very one-sided conversation with technology or with the internet, and if you improve people and involve them, they will actually understand. Finally, this is it. There's a lot, I have had a lot of doubts in my career and in my life, you know. I'm really good friends with all my ex-boyfriends, and people are like, how is that possible? And I said, they made me the woman I am for whoever I date. And so I think those are my mistakes, whether they weren't mistakes, but my mistakes professional. Don't tell them. They weren't, but it's the same with the careers, right? I don't think I compromised myself in a personal, professional matter. And when I did, and I felt my integrity and who I am as Essence Laura was compromised, I've decided to get up. It was hard to leave, you know, Twitter. It was hard to leave other jobs. It was hard to leave this relationship, but I didn't compromise myself. I didn't compromise the deep Laura, the essential, authentic person I am. I make compromises every day into things. Not everything will fit me, and not all things I will fit them. So obviously there's little compromise, but the essential compromise of yourself, who you are, your identity, who as a person, and what you believe in. And you know, I talk to my friends at Coursera, and I think they're building the greatest thing in the world. You know, accessibility to education. I talked to my friend Luis Vanon, who's the founder of Duolingo. He is just brilliant, and the way he's giving back as far as language learning. You know, toppling down, you know, all the institutions that come with language learning, and making sure that you do that. I see that there's a lot of people that don't compromise themselves. They're still passionate about technology, that they're putting it back to that. I feel that whatever you do, whether you're making a change in your life or in your product or in the end result, always just keep the essential and uncompromised yourself. We are so lucky to live in the land of opportunities, and I was so lucky that somehow the moon decided to shift my mom and my family into this region. So here I am. This is me, and I give this thing to you, and don't compromise at all, because people will follow you throughout your whole life and do that horizontal loyalty if they know that you are authentic and that you're true to yourself. That's it. Thank you. I think I have time for questions.
So in your story, you talk a lot about like horizontal loyalty and kind of using these people in your life to like help your career and like help you keep going. Do you have any tips on how to find people like that? Because I find like as a junior engineer, I'm trying to figure out like how do I position myself to be in leadership? Like what's the next step? And it's hard to find people who are kind of at that next step to ask about those things.
No, I think it's important to either ask. I asked myself a question when I started off managing people and then managing a group of very large organization. And the same questions like, who can I help? And a lot of people use the mentor group, the mentorship. But I use much more that sort of community of people. Like, if I'm having doubts in a certain area, I go and ask. And I think most people are really friendly, especially in here. They're so willing to take the time for that coffee or take time for those things, or to keep in contact. Like if it wasn't, where is she? If it wasn't for Sabrina, and I was like, if it wasn't for Sabrina who heard my talk a couple years ago, I wouldn't be here. And so like there are those times where you actually want to make those connections and or like follow up with people. I think like as a junior engineer, you don't probably necessarily need to talk to another woman junior engineer or more female. You can talk to someone that has that leadership, that experience on how to handle career growth. Not necessarily, like we always look, I was like, can I find a Latina in tech and can she be my mentor? No, my mentors have been all shapes and sizes, all colors and all genders in different stages of my career. So you don't have to just look,
Hi, you've been a part of a lot of companies that are paved the way for tech. Coming from a non-technical background, how did you bridge that gap in leading the way for in these high-profile tech companies coming from a non-technical background?
What I had for me was my language. It was my ambition, drive. Because ambition means you compare yourself to somebody else, but I had an internal drive. I had my intelligence, my experience, my background, and my passion. Like time and time again, if I hear one more person describe me as passionate, I would be like, okay, yes. It was that my commitment to learn, be a fast learner, and to think, and to make sure that I was able to demonstrate the business needs, the product needs, and implement that. And I think not coming from a non-technical background shouldn't inhibit any of your pursuit. I know a lot of product managers. I know, for example, even people with technical background. I was at Square the other day just chatting with some people, and they told me a story about an engineer that was an industrial mechanical engineer that wanted to be a software engineer, and so he took courses on Coursera and got a job now doing software engineering at Square. So I think like it's not even the technical background where you want to be headed. There's such a diversity such a diversity in technology right now, but it's much more about what are your assets, what are your strengths that you can show early on. Languages for me was the sort of that door opening and taking that door into technology. So that was for me. I don't know what it is for you, but you might want to just look at where those strengths are. And there's also not working on the tech. You can do product marketing. They're just so rich. I started off in the ad operations sales organization and made my way more into the product because that's where my passion lied. Not necessarily in the coding, but much more shaping the product, the international product.
Hello.
Hi.
I just wanted to thank you for quoting Zora Neale Hurston. That was a really powerful and controversial quote. And I wanted to know what else can we discuss or can we think about Black women's position and Latino women's position in the tech field, and even like thinking about this conference and the very few numbers of Black women here today. What can we do as a community of women to support those who we don't see?
So I think the one problem, and I'm not thinking it's this, is that I know a lot of Black tech groups, I know a lot of Hispanic tech groups, I know they're all still fragmented, and I believe it would just come together into, this is why I was really excited about this event. I was like, this is the one event that I'm not like seeing the same people over and over again. And I love all my Latinos in tech and Hispanic, but obviously I see them more than my mom, so it's just like coming in and meeting new people, meeting new faces. The young women that were sitting on my table while we were doing the prototyping was so exciting, and it was just like, going outside, and I think like seeing that and inviting more, and I was honored to be here and to speak of my story, but not really focusing on that, and then like just making sure that it's not just we isolate ourselves. You know, this is about just diversity in general in tech. If we chat, like, you know, you see a lot of prominent women in technology discussing their stories. I have a friend that's an African American woman that said, "That's a great story, but that's not my story." But it's a story around a certain thing. So like just talking about diversity and not making sure, like I've made jokes at the end of meetings where like, oh, I'm the only girl here, or I'm the only woman here. And it just, so that people can open up of talking about just diversity in general, and making sure that like, as women, as girls are learning how to code, also the girls that may not have had that support to learn how to code have access to being in this amazing industry that is changing literally the world, and we get to live here. And you know, that's where the moon comes in my life. Anything else? Great, thank you so much.
Thanks, Laura. And it was great hearing your story. We were chatting a little bit before the talk started, and it was just really great. Thank you. All right, so before we move to the next session, we'll take a 10-minute break, and please check what the other talk you want to go to is. And if you want to go to the different room, then there are volunteers in the back with the cute card that you can follow. And then we meet back here in 10 minutes for the next talk.